Hello, what's up everybody? Hey Psyda, how you doing? Hey Jake Leduc, how you doing? How's everybody doing today? So, yeah, I hopefully want to finish this track during the stream. We'll see how far I can get. I think there's like a bit of lack of like more melodic kind of elements. There's a lot of like more rhythmic, crazy, psychedelic kind of sounds. There's a bit of like melodic stuff, but I feel like in the breaks and in the intro, if we have like more of a melodic structure, it could maybe give those kind of rhythmic parts like more contrast, so they could really pop out a little bit more. Hey, A Green, Bludge108, how you guys doing? So there was also like some news which has been going around. Steinberg recently announced that, which I think is pretty important to talk about. I don't know, like I'm pretty pro, but I mean, you know, just opening a discussion I think could be interesting, you know, how you guys feel and stuff. But I mean, that being said, I know a lot of you guys aren't really Cubase users, so it might not affect you. But I think these kinds of things, these steps in this direction kind of like pave the way for the future. You know, generally DAWs follow what stuff like Cubase and Logic are doing in the greater scheme of things. So they recently announced that within the next year or so, they will be phasing out VST2 and kind of just solely rely on VST3 as the kind of platform. And while I think, you know, at first glance, it seems like quite a sort of, how can I say, quite a harsh decision, because obviously quite a few legacy plugins and stuff, you know, still exist in VST2 and probably won't be updated to VST3. But on the contrary, I think that there's so many new developers out now that are making such good stuff that both performance-wise and just the features and stuff kind of like outweigh a lot of these kind of like old giants which have been relying on kind of like legacy software for so long. So yeah, it might upset quite a few companies and quite a few people and producers and stuff like that. But I think these kinds of steps do kind of make way for just a kind of better industry in general. Like, yes, I mean, if we look back at like the 32-bit to 64-bit jump, when I think Cubase was the first DAW to remove 32-bit completely, like remove their bridging, like everything. They were just like, no more, 64-bit only. And at first, it was like, wow, okay, that's a very harsh decision. A lot of us had to kind of change the way we did things because we had plugins and stuff like that. But in the long run, how many of us actually look back and think like, oh, I wish we were still on 32-bit, you know? Now, especially where, you know, rigs are like 64 gigs of RAM, if we were still running in 32-bit stuff, we would only be using like an eighth of the kind of resources that our computers allow for and stuff. So, yeah, the quantifiable difference in terms of performance between 32-bit and 64-bit and VST2 and VST3 is minor. I mean, is major. So, obviously with 32-bit, 64-bit, there was a massive increase in performance. But I think with VST3, it's less about the performance and more about just the all-round features that VST3 offers. Certainly, I mean, for me, performance isn't really the big thing because we've all learned ways around that, you know, freezing audio, rendering, all that kind of thing. The performance isn't the issue. I think the main thing that I think is exciting here is the fact that I believe they're working towards a system which is more to do with inter-plugin communication. So I think that's the big thing with VST3, is the fact that VST3 plugins can talk to each other within the DAW. So they can send information, whether it's sidechain information, modulation, and all sorts of things like that. I mean, if we look at, for example, Ableton, and the way that Ableton's devices and Max for Live and stuff offers this kind of inter-plugin communication, however, it's painted into a corner in the fact that it's only available in Ableton. VST3 does kind of have, it paves the way for similar kind of inter-plugin communication, and I think for it to be able to be available in every DAW, I mean, yeah, it's not Max for Live, like, it's different, yes, but there are similarities in terms of the way that plugins can communicate, in the way that certain, for example, I mean, this is purely speculation from this point. I mean, I don't have any inside info or anything like that. Purely speculation. But imagine if the undo function in our DAW would save the history of functions within the plugin, and the whole undo system within the DAW and plugins and everything was just one. So it would no longer be like, oh, choosing the plugin because it has an undo system. Imagine if it was just a standard thing where plugins shared that type of information with the DAW. And it was just, imagine if that was just the standard. You know, it's these kinds of steps in this kind of direction which pave the way for this kind of thing. I mean, what do you guys think? I'm a scribe, I use Cubase, but I just kind of started getting into production in like July, so there's not really old school heavy hitters that I fell in love with, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if we look at the way that development goes, in the past like year or so, there's been such major developments in the way that plugins work, I feel, that I don't miss any of the old guys. I know that, like, you know, what it'll either do is it will push these older companies that aren't updating their stuff out of the market, or it'll wake them up from the dead, you know. How VST3 compares to AU. I'm not exactly sure. Hey, Missy Moon, how are you doing? So, generally speaking, like the big thing which happened with the whole 32-bit, 64-bit is a lot of the older plugins, like the developers woke up from the dead. I mean, if we look at DFX, the guys that made Buffer Override, it did take them a while, but now they're releasing all their stuff in 64-bit again. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just like those kinds of steps in that kind of direction just pave the way for just better DAWs in general. And yeah, we might have to relearn how we do things, but at the end of the day, like we do that each time we buy a new plugin, you know, each time there's major updates or that kind of thing, we do relearn the way we do things anyway. So yeah, back to the project. So this, like I said, it was very like rhythmic heavy, and I thought we could start introducing something a little bit more like of like a running melodic line. So I started writing a melody here, And I got to the point where this sounds cool. It then moves up a key, and then here it just sounds a little bit static. So I kind of want to work on this melody a little bit. We can work on a patch for this as well. I was thinking what could also be cool is we like write this melody and then we figure out like what chords work with these kind of, they're not key changes, but they're like, this is the minor chord and then this is, it's a different chord even though like two of the notes stay the same. It's just like an inversion of a G sharp minor, I think, or something. But we'll figure it out and let's try work out some nice chords that, you know, work in conjunction with this. I had rumor that KeyStep Pro can emulate the pitch glide between notes like a 303, turning nearly any synth into a 303 style awesomeness. Thoughts? I'm not sure about glide on the KeyStep Pro, to be honest with you. I actually tried to figure it out and I didn't get far, but I haven't had much time with it. I didn't see anything about it in the manual, so I did read up about it, but I think it's going to take just a little bit of like actually messing with the thing to figure it out. It does have like a glide parameter, but not per step. Do you know what I mean? I think here it could be cool to, so we've got this kind of like this melodic motif that kind of like repeats. So I think here it could be cool to maybe change it up a bit in this last section so that kind of chord stays the same and maybe just these like accent notes change. Let's maybe put in something and try to figure out the chords like as it's going there, because maybe the chords, maybe having some chords in there could like reveal what that last piece could be. Do you know what I mean? Ulmeho taking time off work to watch this, so worth it. Thank you, man. I hope I don't get you fired. So my favorite thing to just lay down chords and pads and stuff is, of course, Hive. It just sounds so great, but also I just use these presets, like these first few even, like, oh, so good. That's exactly what I want. We are in F minor, I think. Okay, so the second one is just an inversion of the G sharp major. If we're writing in C, that's the thing, because just remember everything is transposed. But it's the key is that this is actually a major chord, not a minor. But it's kind of inverted, so that the top note's actually at the bottom, so it kind of gives it more of a darker feel. So it's like a darker major chord, if you know what I mean. Oh my gosh, what is that again? That reminds me of is it not Zombie Nation? Which one has those chords? I swear, it's always either the Mortal Kombat tune or Zombie Nation, or whichever it is, that one, that old school rave tune that has those chords. I forget the name. That's nice, because all of the chords here actually contain the root note. So technically, like, the bass line doesn't have to change and it'll always be in key. Fancy that. So I don't know if I want it like alongside this part. You know what I mean? So I love it, but I like the way that it contrasts the rest of the stuff. So it's like very old school ravey vibes, but like the rest of the track is kind of like more modern kind of techie vibes. Not techie as in techno, like more technical kind of stuff. Yeah, I just want to use it in the breaks, I think. Hey, Rich Maloon, Massachusetts, USA, 4:30 a.m. Jesus. The question though is, are you do you wake up early, or are you still awake? That's the big question. Bruh, check out Rift Feedback Lite. I think it's still free at the moment. You can do exactly this sound. Exactly this sound you can do with the free version. Yes, that's the one. dash best advice to somebody like me who reuses the same chords. Transpose. So, like me, I only ever write in C minor or C Phrygian, but my tracks aren't all in C Phrygian or C minor. They're in different like root notes. But if you just transpose the track, you can play the same thing, but it'll come out at a different root note. So just transpose the MIDI, dude. And then you have a completely different track. That's literally what I do. Bro, you gotta work smart, not hard. That's the trick, dude. That's the trick. Just do the same things, but just change like the inputs, like what's happening. Also try like reverse things around, like write in your chords, but then like flip them backwards and listen to what it sounds like. Because often like when we're thinking, especially like beginners like myself with music theory, we often think of like tracks starting with the root notes chord. But that's often not the case. Sometimes when it ends on the root note chord, it can sound more powerful. So try write a thing and then just flip it backwards. Do you know what I mean? Are you a keyboard player? Do you read music? No. I wouldn't say, like, I can read music, but I can't sight read. So, like, I can't read while I'm playing, but I can read music. Because I did do theory when I was much younger. And I did piano and stuff when I was a kid, but, like, I can't really play. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I just, like, punch in some stuff. So what I'll usually do is like I'll open a thing and be like, okay, I like those 3 notes, and then I'll write those notes in with the MIDI. I generally don't actually play it in. Sometimes I do. Like the rhythm of this Mad Plucks thing I played in. It kind of has a bit more of an organic thing. But it's just super simple, I guess. But I guess it depends what you're going for. Like these very programmed arpeggiators, it's very hard to play that in exactly on the grid. And often you do want it exactly on the grid, so it can help to just like know the notes and then program it in. Cool, that works. I like that. I like that. That's actually exactly kind of the thing I wanted, like this melodic transition back into the kind of more rhythmical side of things, or more psychedelic side of things. I want to try shift this into, or put this, duplicate it into like the intro as well, because this track doesn't really have much of an intro. It kind of just starts out of nowhere. So we can try build one, I think. Okay, it seems like we've already built one. I think that kind of delay, we can let it go for like a few bars and then drop it in. So like not here, like shift it backwards like a few beats so that it like delays a few beats and then comes in. I think that could be cool. It sounds like this thing is slightly out of key. It's supposed to be in C. And if you transpose C plus 5, that's F. And we're in F. But it's not sounding right. So I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here.
Consciousness. 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 Consciousness.
I think what I'll... Oh, the mic was on. I think what I'll do is let's try vocoder. It might work. Oh, it's not an effect. It's... It's an actual instrument. Here, we could actually load it, or we could just run... Let's just run the audio straight in using this. Which one is it? LPD Robot Vox.
Consciousness. Consciousness. Consciousness.
Ouch.
Consciousness.
I like the kind of audibility of just like the default one. Intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. That's how it's done, my friends. The good old the Beastie Boys were doing it. They were making that Psytrance vocal effect long before anybody else. I think those need a bit of finessing. Maybe like some delays and things. I like that kind of like the thing with that high chord. I think this maybe could do with like a delay on it or something. Maybe we can just play around with that. I'm going to be right back though. Let me loop for you guys what we have so far. I don't know about this. I like it, but it just doesn't quite like work, you know. Hey Lava, how you doing? Yeah, man. So Steinberg recently announced that within the next year, Cubase, the latest updates for Cubase will stop supporting it. I personally think it's a good thing because it'll push people to go more towards VST3, which has particular kind of like there's pros. I think there's more pros to it than cons. Yeah, we might lose like a couple of like old plugins, but I mean, it will maybe kind of kick those developers, you know, into gear to make, you know, updates for their stuff, and I think that's a good thing. So yeah, we had a bit of a chat about that right at the beginning. Do you mind explaining making tracks in a lower than F bass note? Yeah, you generally are going for, when you're going for like a lower note, you're generally going to get like a more swampier sound. Like more of a kind of like Zenon-esque kind of dark prog kind of sound when you work in lower keys. And one way to get that to sound a bit cleaner with bass notes is to use a lot of octaves. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, the whole 64-bit thing, that was long ago. 32-bit, 64-bit switch, that was long ago. Now it's the VST2 versus VST3 switch. Which, like, yeah, there's not going to be as much performance increase as there was back then, but there's other features, you know, like inter-plugin communication, the fact that, like, automations will have exact values. So, like, for example, like, you can automate things, and in the plugin, if it's semitones, like plus 24, you will see that on the actual automation lane, like plus 24, then technically you should be able to snap automations to specific, like, values and stuff. It's just better all around. It's simpler, but I think it's just more effective. I think that just works. Sometimes if it works, it works, hey? Play game today. Dash, you need to try Adam, I guess. Adam Sabo Viper VSTI. Why? What does it have? What does it have that Vital does not? So I'm totally willing, if there are features there that don't already exist. I checked it out briefly. They say it's apparently a clone of a virus, but there's no granular mode, which is like the one thing I think that the virus has that other things don't have. So like, I don't know. Does it have the granular thing? Granular complex mode. I thought the appeal was the hypersaw, but the hypersaw is just a unison saw wave. So like literally even a microfreak can do that. What is this? DSP 5300. Is that thing that you have to load in like the console? Does it have the granular complex mode? I don't know. I don't see anything about it. Synth emulator. It emulates the old ones, it seems. Virus C, Virus B, and Virus A. Which, like, that's... I mean, to be honest, like, Synth was on par with the Virus A, B, and C. In terms of features. And, like, I mean, if we look at, like, 90s VSTs, then we can maybe compare. But I don't think there's any point in having, like, in running, like, a console on the side just to load up, like, a Virus C emulation. I mean, Serum, Vital, like, literally any synth on the market nowadays will be more versatile. Unless you want, like, a very... and it's very buggy. See what I mean? Guys, just, like... There's I think a lot of people like chase this kind of like these unicorns. Like people say like, oh, you know, this particular synth is like the perfect synth for Psytrance or whatever, and then suddenly like everyone has to have that synth and they're not willing to learn like anything else. But like at the end of the day, like I think who mentioned this, the hypersaw, the point pi, like I think that's also a good representation of the fact that like, yeah, maybe the hypersaw in that one sounded nice, but I mean, like, with just some finessing from any VST plugin, if you know, like, the fundamentals of how to do this, how to make hypersaw, it shouldn't matter on what chip you're doing it. You know what I mean? The virus stuff isn't analog; it's all digital, so it's all zeros and ones, so it can all be replicated in software. You know what I mean? There's nothing particular about that has like a particular sound or a particular quirk or something that like analog stuff has, you know. So I think instead of like searching for these like unicorns or whatever it is, just use the plugin that you have, learn it inside out, and you're better off. Because I mean, if you get the virus, you're gonna have to learn it inside out anyway. So just learn what you've got, you know. Nothing comes close to an Axis virus. But why? What does it have? In my opinion, the big draw card of the virus is the fact that it's got all the effects and everything built in. So like it's like a nice preset box. Do you know what I mean? But you can do exactly the same stuff with like every other synth on the market, except the granular complex mode. Like that is pretty cool. But like, anyway. I also own a classic virus, bro. But like I haven't turned the thing on in like 10 years because there's no point. It's all digital. Like there's nothing analog in there, so it's all ones and zeros. It doesn't have a sound. Do you know what I mean? It can't have a sound unless the sound is like programmed in with an EQ or something like that. But then you should just be able to program that in your software. Do you know what I mean? I think it is the presets that draw people, 100%. That's what it is. It's the presets and it's the branding. It's like this artist has one and his sound is great. It's that whole like thing. Do you know what I mean? Deeman Chowdhury was watching Cheese Masterclass and he referred to your channel for faceplant tutorials. Amazing stuff, mate. Dude, another person actually told me about that. Alchemy Neuro, who also has great channel. Probably closer to Cheese stuff, actually. So if you're here from Cheese channel or from Cheese Masterclass, you should definitely check out Alchemy Neuro because his stuff is probably like closer to what you want. But anyway, it's so cool that he shouted me out. I always like to have my drops like this as clean as possible. So like when there's a lead that comes in, I like to delay it by a couple of bars and just bring it in a little bit later. That also kind of gives you a bit more of a groovy feel, like things are constantly like building and building and building. Do you know what I mean? And also like it feels more groovy because it's not always coming in on the one. Do you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of electronic music is just like loop, new thing coming on the one. Another loop, new thing coming in on the one, and that's just so like linear and so boring. Like just like bring things in on the 3 or whatever, you know. Hey, Cos Billingham, how you doing? Dylan, Jonathan, I got lessons from Stuart. Stuart. Yeah, man, higher end. Cool. Filters, even digital, sound different. Yeah, but a digital filter, you can recreate another digital filter, like to the T. Do you know what I mean? Like mathematically they can be exactly the same. But with analog filters, it's like to have two, like you have to calibrate them and stuff so that two analog filters sound the same. But with digital, it's just code. It's all just ones and zeros coming out of the speakers. So like, I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to go into the analog versus digital thing because that's a whole other conversation. Like, digital and analog are both fantastic. They're both fantastic, and I don't think one is better than the other. It's just, I guess, different uses, different things. Knowing what you want out of each one, I guess, is the takeaway. Like with analog, it's always going to be a little bit more, like, I don't want to say organic because it's not. It's just going to always be a little bit more quirky. Whereas that's not what people want when they're buying a virus. They want to load that preset and it's going to be the exact same preset every single time they use it. Whereas with analog stuff, that's not often the case. Sometimes things have to warm up and the tuning goes up and down and all sorts of things. But people who buying viruses and stuff, they don't want that. You know what I mean? They're like, often it was designed more, I think, for film composer type people that just want 1,000 presets of just like all these cinematic sounds and 16 layers of it, and they can just like evangelist types, like strings and all sorts of things like that. But I mean, nowadays you have a DAW, and I feel like the workflow within a DAW is so much more conducive to being able to do sound design and that kind of thing. So, I mean, unless you're like a gigging musician that plays these like orchestral type things, I don't think there's that much pull to buying it. Especially also because the fact that soon you're not going to be able to use it anymore with Cubase because of the whole VST2, VST3 thing. So I think we're going to see a lot of viruses hit the market very soon, because I don't think Access is going to release a VST3 version of their plugin. They haven't released an update in years, so that's a whole other thing about digital versus analog. Analog, I've still got synths here from like the fucking 70s that still work, you know what I mean? It's not about software updates, and you don't have to, you know what I mean? It turns on and pew pew, I think that's the draw card as well. It's like sometimes that simplicity of these things just is timeless, We still like, how many years on, how complex do you need sound design to be? And we just like put the 303 in and it always sounds good. You know what I mean? The most basic synthesizer, just put it in and it always sounds good. In fact, let's do it here. Let's put in a 303 sound. I'll prove it that you don't need these fancy things. Could even just plug in the actual 303 over there. Oh wait, I think the power, I've been rewiring things so the power is not in there. I don't know if you like going and finding another extension. But yeah, for Scion. I think just like a simple stab, like a bow. Do you know what I mean? We can use that as like a grid type of sound. I think the most popular distortions and stuff back then was like actual pedals, like guitar effects pedals, stuff like the something or other Rat. I know is very popular. Also the Tube Screamer. There's a very nice Tube Screamer emulation, in fact, by the Cytomic guys, who I know they've done most of the like programming, the DSP and stuff for the Ableton effects, I think. Or at least like I know they did the filter. This is a pretty crazy pedal. If you haven't seen me mention this before in a video, it seems unassuming, you know what I mean? Just like 3 knobs, that kind of thing. But you can modify each of the components on the actual like circuit board. So the Tube Screamer was, I think, synonymous with like modifications and stuff like that. If you check like forums, like electronics forums and stuff, there's a lot of people that talk about like different modifications and swapping capacitors for this and that to change the sound and all sorts of things. So you can like check out like what people did and actually swap out like the certain things to make it sound like different, or to modify it in your own way, which I think is pretty cool. So you can kind of get your own unique distortion sound that kind of like nobody else really has, just because you've kind of changed out the components and that kind of thing. But I mean, just like straight out the bat, this thing sounds amazing. Hey, Eduardo Pedrosa. What's up, YouTube? uh, we'll definitely try running my Behringer TD3 into the Scream later. I often find using distortion in the digital realm on stuff from the outside world not so good. So you'll probably have better. I don't know if you have Fossi on, But I would say if you are going for a distorted 303 sound, either distort it in the analog realm and then record it in, or create it in the digital realm and distort it there. Often when you're running things through a preamp and then distorting it inside the box, the distortion adds little gremlins from your preamp. So like the noise floor from your preamp actually gets introduced into the signal. So either distort it outside or create it inside. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm gonna be right back. I don't know. Hey, I would like. I haven't personally decided. Just to answer your question, do you guys find the Roland System 1 good? I've heard it has a mode that makes it exactly like the SH101. So I would just be very wary about the Roland stuff. It's good, but whenever they say like, "Oh, it's exactly like," and then one of their old synthesizers, particularly like the 303 and the 101, like they don't quite get it. There are other replicas that I think are closer, to be honest with you, than Roland's newer remakes. I think particularly the SH101, like the boutique range of their newer stuff of Roland, their boutique stuff apparently has come closest to the originals in terms of the sound. But with the 101, they went completely in the wrong direction. It's like a polyphonic synth as opposed to analog, monophonic. So it sounds pretty different. Also, the filter also sounds different and stuff. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Unless somebody has like used them and compared them like next to each other, I would say the System 1 is probably not the way to go if you want like the exact 101 sound. I would say that what's that other? There's like a smaller brand that does a replica of it. I can't remember now. Play Game Today is saying the Roland era ended in 2004. Everything they released after is garbage. The stuff is good. It's just it's not the same. Do you know what I mean? And they try to sell it as the same, but it's like totally not. You know, you might be able to make this like a patch that maybe sounds the same, but like there's certain things in there that won't be the same. You know. There's also the Behringer MS101. Like as much I don't like to promote this brand because I don't like the brand for various reasons, other than like a lot of their products are pretty rubbish, but like the MS101 does come very close in terms of the sound, but the sequencer and the arpeggiator works totally different. And I think the sequencer, like the way that sequencer works on the 101 is like such a huge integral part of the sound, but they don't get it right. So I don't know. I think that's too much for the end. We want to like bring it down in tension, like here at the end. I think that's a bit too much. I think it flows nicely. It was just here, I think I wanted to do something with this part. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's just a bit dry. Yeah, I think it's much better like that, like cut up. Is there I see, analog wavetable synth, if that even makes sense, because table has to be digital, right? Yeah, you're right. You answered your own question there. I do believe there's no such thing as analog wavetable synth because it has to be storing the data. Do you know what I mean? So, like, and it stores and reads the data from like a digital source. So I don't think an analog synth would be able to do that. That being said, is the way that a lot of the plugins are generating their wavetables is they're saving the data in terms of like harmonic bins, which is a kind of additive method. And there is such a thing as kind of additive analog synthesis. It's just like not as complex as digital additive, where you have like 2,000 or so harmonics that you can use. With the analog additive, you generally have like 8, and it's just like a polyphonic voice that you just tune to the harmonics and that kind of thing. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the flow. But what I want to do now is just like listen to it a few times and pop with my scopes open and stuff, and then just put in like markers on the marker track where I feel like we could potentially jump in and like fine tune the mix stuff a little bit. I think at certain points you can hear like some of those like percussive sounds like hit the mid range, I think, a little bit too hard and stuff. So I'm just gonna play it through, jot down on the marker track where I think we need some adjustments in the mix, and we will then jump back in. I'm also looking for stereo in the low end, but while the kick and bass is playing. So like here in the intro, it's fine. There's not much like subs anyway. But in the main portions of the track, I want to make sure there's nothing stereo happening here at the bottom. This is like a phase spectrum / frequency spectrum, so it shows you what stereo information is happening at what frequency. So you can see like the low frequency of the track is like straight mono, but it's a quick way of being able to tell if you haven't, for example, like check the description, all my links are there, man. You might have to copy paste some stuff or change some stuff, but like I don't really concentrate on SoundCloud all that much. It's a dog show there. It's terrible. My tunes are on Bandcamp. new album is coming soon. I did actually see somebody mention something about like, is it done? Yes, but I sent it to mastering recently, so I'm just waiting for it to get back. Sorry if I forgot to answer that, or if I did and I'm repeating myself. Yeah, SoundCloud is rubbish. Spotify is also rubbish. Bandcamp or here on YouTube, best place to find my music. Oh, it looks like it's missing the T. SoundCloud/glitchcpt. That's my SoundCloud, but I haven't updated it in years because SoundCloud is rubbish. So you see here in the break, I'm not sure if you guys can like hear me talk while the music's playing, but I just want to show you, like, you can see this stereo information happening here. So it's a nice way of being able to quickly see like what frequencies you've got stereo content happening. That's why I generally use Supervision. But you can, it's the best scope tool. I kind of like Curve EQ because you can imprint the curve on it and stuff. But yeah, Supervision is so good. So like what I'm doing now is like I'm just listening. I'm not paying too much attention to the scopes. I'm just listening, kind of like going with the groove and stuff. But then if I hear something that kind of sounds like it's a little bit too much out of place, then I'll check the scope and see at what frequency it's like sticking out, and I'm jotting that frequency down. And then we can go back into each part and kind of like see if we can EQ. So it's kind of reminding me like, go here, check what part is sticking out at 1K or 500 or whatever, and then maybe EQ those a little bit. So I'm not just religiously relying on the scope. I'm kind of like listening, and when something sticks out too much, I use it to see at what frequency it's sticking out. Do you know what I mean? So like, for example, I was like listening, I was grooving, and I was like, that doo is like just, it sounded like it was poking out a bit much. So if you look at the scope, you can actually see, boo, when it goes boo, there, it's exactly 700. Exactly 700 hertz. So I'm going to go insert, marker, and I'm going to write here, it was exactly 700 hertz. So now I know, like, to look for that channel and see if I can EQ that little bit. Do you know what I mean? So, the reason why I like this technique is that now it gives us a roadmap. I see a lot of people like the whole thing like, oh, now I've got to mix the track. Oh, mix the track. A lot of people make a big hoo-ha about mixing the track because, like, I feel like a lot of the time you're kind of going at it blind. But if you just, like, jot down a bunch of stuff and follow that list of things that you need to do methodically, you're able to just, like, tick it off one by one. I mean, here, let's look at this. Like, 10 things. There's 10 things that we need to do, I think, with the mix. And it's small things, just little EQ adjustments here and there. And I think it's just, the track is just going to pop. So, yeah. It just makes it more powerful for workflow because now you've got this like list of things. You do the one thing, tick it off, and you will find often what happens here. You'll see here's 1K to 2K, 1K to 2K again. Often you'll find that, oh no, I don't want to move it, sorry. These are probably the same problem. It's probably the same sound that plays twice. I might be wrong, we'll see. But like, again here, 700 and 700. I think those are the same sound playing twice. So you'll see often what happens now is we'll get through this one and we'll find out, okay, now we've ticked off number 2 as well. And we've ticked off number 6 and then we've ticked off number 9 and whichever ones as well. So we'll get through this very quickly. I think the sample is also a little bit too much like 1K, 2K around there. A little bit too much around that area. Hey, Adrenochrome, how are you doing? I have add marker assigned to a key command. I turn the monitor off and play the track back while adding markers to come back to later when mixing. Oh yeah. Like I think the default key command for add marker is insert. J Hutch, what time is it where you are? It is almost 2 p.m. What time is it where you are, Mr. J Hutch? I think this is the offending sound, and I've already EQ'd it at 500 and at around 700. I just EQ'd those by ear. Oh no, wait, that's 5K. Okay. So we might have to add... you know what? I'm actually going to leave it as it was. let's put, because we're going to have to add EQ nodes anyway. Just going to do it with equilibrium. So it was about 700, or no, exactly 700 hertz. And then somewhere around 500 to 600, there was frequencies coming through. Just punch in here, 700. I see the question. Do I ever use Psyscope? No, I prefer Ocelos Megascope. Let me show you why. because you can run 2 channels and they communicate with each other. So you can have like both on one screen. You can see your kick and your bass separately, but then you can also combine them. Why are you removing such precise frequencies? Because the sound here had exactly too much of exactly 700 hertz at this exact point here. That point. Psy is asking, how am I going to name this track? I actually called it Conscious Decisions. I might just call it Consciousness. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it works. You know what would sound really nice there is like kind of clean but distorted sine wave sweep. So like cleanish a sine wave sweep. Dash, what plugins do you use for mid and side process? EQ. I use Equilibrium. It's really good. You could also do a thing in Snap Heap where you parallel the channels, use the stereo effect, and split them between mid and side, and then you could process literally anything in mid side. Like any effects in the kilohertz range, which is pretty cool. What do you guys rate? Clean break or with or without that little droplet, that little boop sound effect, with or without that? What do you guys think? Let me loop like this whole part like a few times. I need to run to the bathroom real quick and get a refill on my water. But let me know what you think about this particular break. Maybe I should do a poll. With or without droplet? With, without. But it's only specifically in the break, hey guys. I'm gonna be right back. Yep, looks like we're gonna have it with the pluck. That's good, that's good. So there was one more thing here. One more thing on the list. This thing here. Let's see what's happening. I think it was actually in this, like I explained earlier, you know, I think it was duplicate. I think it was this sound, but we EQ'd it here with one of these other things. So I think we fixed that. Let's actually just listen to it in the mix. Because when I was listening to it looping, I didn't hear anything pop out, you know. So here, like I've set up a chain where it's paralleled, and then using the stereo effects modules, you can turn the width down on the one and the mid down on the other. And then what you've done is you've basically split it into like a mid-side. So we could process just like the side channels, for example, and have still a very solid center. So we would still have like a very mono, like it would still work in mono. Do you know what I mean? If we only process the side channels with like panning and stuff. Nail damnified. Do you mean this sound? That's from my Vital Volume 2 preset pack. I can't remember exactly which sound it is. I did make it in the last stream, I think. Cool. I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that. So I think I'm going to call it a day. How long has it been? Like 3:30. Maybe what I'll do is, because you guys have heard this one quite extensively, I've got one of the other ones I've been working on that I've just rendered out. Where is it now? I will like play out with one of these ones. You guys have probably heard this one the least. I think the levels should be fine. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. Let's just see how it sounds here. Perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I will see you guys next time. I hope you enjoy this track, or both of them. I hope you enjoy all the music and the lessons that I teach and stuff. I will see you guys soon. Yeah. Cheers.
Distortion.